Hello, and welcome to the next episode of the Live Your Spa Life show. Spa life is a lifestyle that accepts that accomplishment and harmony coexist. The Spa and Spa Life, the SPA, is for Seek Power Always, that power within you to do your deeper work in the world. I am feeling so privileged today to introduce my special guest, Dr. Theresa Larson DPT, where she was a former military corps officer turned doctor of physical therapy, whose mission is to empower individuals and companies with the knowledge and tools to achieve a lifetime of physical freedom. We're going to talk a little bit more about that. And she does this with her Movement RX team via education, telehealth, and online wellness programs. She was way ahead of the game of people working from home. And she is married to her love pair, who also has a beautiful boy, Magnus, who is 3 years old, and she's expecting her second son, who is due June 29th. She loves lifting weights, climbing mountains, snowboarding, and enjoying quiet time in her garden. Theresa, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Diane. I'm excited to be here.
Well, I'm excited to jump in here because, a lot of people have felt confined in their homes. There's been, a lot of unrest in the world and things that are happening. Let's talk about what physical freedom actually means to you. And I love how you talk about living pain-free is a process, not a pill. So I'd love to kind of jump in with that.
Yeah, well, as a physical therapist, I've been in the industry for 8 years now, and then of course school and all that stuff. And it's just so common to see health professionals and just people, one individuals accept that their pain is just their life. Like pain is part of their life. Oh, I was injured and now I'm just in pain and I'm getting old and this is just my life, which isn't true. It's common but not true, and common but not normal. And then health professionals, oftentimes because of insurance and time restrictions and quantity of patients, oftentimes experience this, like, they only treat symptoms, right? Like, oh, your shoulder hurts or your knee hurts, let's just focus there. When really, like, the problem is elsewhere, it's systemic. And so with our company as a PT, I just was like, and especially coming out of the Marine Corps, like I wasn't 22 coming out of grad school, I was like 32. And the Marine Corps made me grow up fast. And I just was like, I don't have patience for this. I don't have patience to be in this industry. I'm going to create my own path, and people can follow or not, but I'm going to educate and do it the way I feel. I treat people the way I feel they deserve to be treated. And so that's when I started Movement RX. And the whole concept of physical freedom revolves around just like people can be physically, the ability to maintain your joints and your soft tissue and your brain health and your movement health is possible. And those are the very things that help you actually eliminate pain over time and build function. And so our job is to give you little lifestyle skill sets on how you clean up your internal environment as well as your external environment in easy practical things that you can do, whether you're at the office or you're at home. And so a lot of the, during COVID, of course, everyone's quarantined, to include myself, just here. And sometimes the monitor isn't ideal. They're not in ideal positions when you're working long hours, or, you're starting to build aches and pains in your neck or your shoulders or your back, or you just don't feel like you get enough movement. So that's where we come in and are offering solutions to people to help them, give them little things. It's like a lifestyle, right? Movement is a lifestyle. So we're not shaming people from the fact that haven't built these skills yet. It's like, no, this is a great time to start building them. Shoot, I just told you, exercise was just taken away from me. Being in a house with a toddler and having a baby soon, it's I feel very confined. So I have to get really creative on the way I move my body. I've got foam rollers, I've got balls, I've got the streets, right? I can go for walks. I don't need to be doing anything intense all the time, even when I'm not pregnant. And so the physical freedom piece is giving people knowledge about their joint health and their soft tissue health and ways to maintain it in ways that's easy for them to bite off during the day. So.
Wow. Yeah, I love this so much. And I love just the empowerment conversation because you're so right, where
Yeah.
people will be like, oh, I can't do this anymore. There's like all these different excuses. And I think a lot of it is a lack of knowledge. And then when you just realize that, yeah, you might have an ache and pain somewhere, but it's not just because of that. And to look at the
Right.
totality of the person really makes a big difference. And I think this is more important than ever. And I love that you're a disruptor in this, that you're not just settling with like, well, oh, well, you're just going to have this for the rest of your life, to really confront people with that, to really look at, hey, there are other ways to look at this. And, I was smiling when I was looking at the titles of your books, because I feel like they're more relevant now than ever. And I love you to speak into them, because one is, warrior, right? Ownership
Hmm.
of your life. I mean, first of all, I love the word warrior, and I'm in several groups we've talked about that actually have that title, because that's just stepping up to a challenge to really take that responsibility. And then your other book around my new normal and dealing with loss, trauma, and major change. Who can relate to that that's happening right now,
Yeah.
right? And, we can say
Yes.
specific with what's happening, but the truth of it is we're always faced with something in our life. That's just evolving. It's just the new
Right.
version of that and new levels of that. So I'd love for you to just kind of speak to just those two books in general, and how we can utilize that as empowerment tools for people to really take that personal responsibility, and how they can move through challenging times.
Yeah. So the book Warrior is something I published in 2016. It's my memoir. And it was about my experience growing up with two brothers and my dad, and having lost a mother when I was 10, and joining the Marine Corps and being a professional athlete. And then it's like my come to wellness story, really. The Marine Corps was a great place to be from. It definitely pulled out my strengths and weaknesses. It taught me to be the leader I am today. There's so many skill sets I got from it, but it exposed a major malfunction. I had an eating disorder, and that brought out, it exposed that. And so I had to really face that for the first time in my life, like ask for help, like put myself first, which is very hard for, I think, women to do, leaders to do, because they're so busy. And it's like, but putting myself first for once, and asking for help, and learning skill sets along the way through movement and mobility and breath work and community, and like really diving into what I wanted. I mean, therapy is ongoing. It's like a lifelong thing. But I finally, admitted that my issue wasn't a weakness. Like my asking for help was my issue. My asking for help wasn't a weakness. It was a sign of strength. So the whole book Warrior is about kind of that come to wellness and asking for help in the midst of combat in Fallujah, where I was doing a lot of things and it was back in 2005 when women weren't allowed to be in combat yet. I was an engineer and doing things outside of the wire that most women weren't allowed to do. And so the story made for more of an intense story. I think the story relates to a lot of people about trying to be perfect, having a disordered eating pattern in your life, or some kind of coping mechanism that isn't serving you. Maybe it's over exercise, maybe it's eating too much, maybe it's hanging out with the wrong people, watching crap TV to numb, whatever it is, right? Like people deal with that. Addiction is very prevalent in our country. So that's what Warrior in a nutshell, like it was a wonderful project for me, because it really like helped me express my come to wellness to this point. And then of course life continues, and I started the podcast, actually, My New Normal. And My New Normal is, I started it because I work with so many adaptive athletes who would be considered disabled by society, veterans who had lost limbs, had traumatic brain injuries, concussions, which are traumatic brain injuries, spinal cord injuries, people that I like, because I'm in the high performance industry with like fitness and health. And so people come to us when they want to, overcome plateaus, or they have an injury that won't get better and they have a competition coming up, or, they want to become a firefighter or whatever it is. And so like, I found that these individuals I worked with, they were so good at with these permanent injuries, were so good at overcoming their, like, just facing what they had. Like, okay, I have a spinal cord injury, I have to move on. Like, I got to figure this out and figure out my new normal. Like, I have no choice. And so I learned a ton from them and was like, I have to do a podcast on this and start interviewing these people, which, turned into a couple seasons. And then now I do like a form of that podcast on my Movement RX platform, where I bring in health professionals and we talk about, especially right now, ways of coping and dealing with our current situation. And whether it's from, like, I have a guest on this week that's going to be talking about lactation and breastfeeding in the workplace for moms. I've had, and I've talked about like ergonomic positions, but either way, giving people like little skill sets and testimonials of people who really like grasped this new normal and thrived, because it's totally possible. It's just, sometimes you have to get out of your own way. So.
Right. No, I so appreciate that, because I remember when I was on the police department, I shattered my gun hand, and that was, normal just didn't exist anymore, because, I had to start using everything with my left hand, and like there's a mindset healing and then there's a physical body healing. And, putting those two things together, I love that you speak into that, because I really do believe when you've got great support and you've got the mindset that it's possible, then I think you can really move mountains and really make shifts. So I so appreciate what's happening with that, because I think that, one, with your first book about asking for help, I think that's so challenging, especially for women, because we feel like we just need to not only do it all, but that we shouldn't ask any questions, especially if you work in a male-dominated field. It's almost like you're trying to prove even more in those type of circumstances. Yeah. So I love that just by putting it out there, it just, I think, allows people to kind of take a deep breath to be like, okay, all right, I don't have to be perfect, and there are resources and there are other things you can do. I think it's helpful to have that out there.
Yeah. if you look at, I love this woman's work, Brene Brown, who wrote Daring Greatly and Rising Strong and Lead, Courage to Lead. She's literally done research on shame and vulnerability, right? And like, when you share a story authentically with someone, like I did through my memoir, and like she does through her books, and like what you're doing with this podcast, it's like it gives other people the authority to open up and realize they're not alone. And it really is important. When I listen to her talk, especially, I think I just finished Rising Strong, and like there's always stuff that comes up. The other book I love is The Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Like, I don't know if I can swear on this, but such a great book. And the thing is, it's so true. It's like, you're always going to have problems, right, that come up. Like, you can have the best day, the best thing that happened, and then there's always something else that's just like percolating there. And it's how you like, maneuver through it. This is like a new normal of learning that too, with all of the chaos going on in the world, and then home life, and learning how to surf it, essentially. Surf it. Right. But what I loved about her last book, Rising Strong, was just the stories about her vulnerabilities with people and family and audience, people that, follow her. And I'm just like, I can 100% relate. And that was super helpful, because then I didn't feel alone. And I was like, oh, I don't feel crazy. Okay, whatever if I'm a little crazy. Who cares? Everyone gets a little crazy at times. So it was and like the way she like goes through the whole reaction of what happens to people when they have a trigger. I'm like, oh, that is so me. You just like get all fired up and want to write this email, and then you're like, wait, stop. Don't do that. Don't send that yet, because things could go really wrong. I've been there so many times, and it's just like, now it's just my journal. I just like write, and then it slowly, like as I ride the wave, it gets better, and I can essentially deal with these triggers and through breath work and writing and good people in my life. But I think that's why stories are so important.
Yeah. What do you think about like having like some levity and laughter and some humor, added into it? Because I find that I can
Mhm.
get really serious on some things because I want it like done a certain way. And we were just laughing before we went live here that, we've changed how we use our cameras. And so like I literally
Right.
just did a whole episode looking down. And
Yeah.
it's just one of those things where it's like if you can't laugh at yourself and move on and be human, it's like that's when I think you can get sick, right? You just kind of keep all those things inside, and that whole, dis-ease leads to disease, right? All those things that
Right.
can happen. So I'd love to hear more about how you use like meditation and journaling to kind of get you on track, and specifically about, you mentioned in journaling about looking at the stories you tell yourself. Can you elaborate a little bit more on that?
Yeah. So I've just in the last few years, through some of the work I've done with my health professionals I work with, and some personal development I've done, um, I I just have really been able to get more clear on like owning my story, if that makes sense.
Mhm.
So like there's this concept that I teach between like facts. There's the facts of what happened in your life, right? Like the fact that, okay, I had an eating disorder, but then the story I told myself was I wasn't good enough, right? So just being able to differentiate, you kind of can get meshed together. Like I wasn't good enough, I'm not strong enough, I'm not capable enough, and it kind of blend with the facts. The facts make you make meaning that can be very harmful to yourself
Right.
and your development. And so just through writing and like, of course, putting myself out there more, I've been able to get a lot of clarity. However, just through trainings I've done, it's like when you really get clear on the facts, and this is how I journal when I have something going on, or I need to work through something, I like write down what actually happened, like what actually happened. And then the story, I make it mean, which is super helpful because a lot of times it's distorted, the story.
Right.
I mean, and our thoughts, the research shows, according to brain researchers, that 62% of our thoughts can be negative at any one point. And think about negative, distorted. And so just knowing that, it's like in moments of trigger, you're going to be distorted. Like there's just, and I think knowing that allows me, it doesn't make it hurt any less or feel any worse, like better. I mean, that's the thing about being in the arena, right? Or being on the court, like it sucks. It really
Mhm.
sucks hurting and like
Right.
facing your discomforts, whether it's with a family member, a relationship, whatever it is. And so when I've been able to, with journaling, I'm very good about, okay, this is what I'm dealing with. This is the facts. And then this is the story I make it mean. And this is, so what kind of story after, and I let it kind of die down over time too. Like
Right.
I might make it mean something like I'm not good enough or this person doesn't love me. And then, you have to give sometimes these triggers space, which is what journaling can do if you're continuous with it. And over time, you realize, okay, well, these are the facts. And what it tells me is that this person isn't actually, they're not good for me in my life. And maybe I
Mhm.
just need boundaries around them. Good, bad, or whatever. It's just, it doesn't mean they don't love me. It doesn't mean, they don't care about me. Maybe they do or don't. But what matters is that I'm just going to have boundaries around them because of the situation, because of the facts. And I think it's really powerful to do that because then you don't get caught up in the he said, she said, reacting back and forth via email, text, phone calls. It's just, that it helps you create boundaries in your life.
Yeah.
And and when you do it, you kind of start to realize the patterns that your brain, because your brain likes patterns.
Right.
The when you have a trigger with a relationship or something that happens, you realize that you kind of go down the same spiral pathway. And when you can identify that and stop it and just say, okay, this is just what happened, I just got this email or this person said this to me, but I don't have to make it mean anything. Like I don't have to do anything about that. um, I can just move on and because I know I'm a good person, right? I know
Right.
that yes, this happened and I can address the fact, but I don't have to make it mean anything about myself. And
Right.
that's been really powerful for me because, it's hard because I do care about what people think, but like a lot of researchers say, like, you only want to care about what a few people think, the people that you really
It's a good
respect.
distinction.
Yeah, like I do care about what people think, but there's only like 5 of them that I care and
Right,
that I want to
right,
care. And granted, I've been hurt by people that aren't part of that 5, but I've realized, okay, they're not part of that 5. And considering the source, these aren't really people I need to be in touch with anyway. And
right,
it's better to just phase them out of your life, or phase, if it's a work environment and it's toxic, it's probably good to phase it out of your life if it's
right.
causing these triggers. So that's the beauty. And I'm not a mental health expert or anything like that, but I think the program that, Brene Brown talks a lot about it. Simon Sinek talks about stories. There's some trainings like Landmark training that talks about stories. I think it's a super helpful distinction for people to get clear on, because
Right.
then what you stop doing is blaming and shaming others, and you
Right.
just own it. And it's like, this happened, because it's so often, someone can do something to you, or you feel like, let's look at just social media. Someone posts something, right? And it really pissed you off and you felt like they were attacking you. Maybe there's someone close to you. This has actually happened to me. And this is
Okay.
not uncommon. And I'm not even a millennial. But it's like, I didn't even think anything of it. However, it really made this person upset. And they made it mean something, right? They made an entire story up about this, like what it made it mean, who I was. And it's like, when you actually look at the fact, this thing was just posted about, some leadership training or whatever it was. And what are you telling yourself about that? Like,
Right.
going down this rabbit hole. So when you can identify it and realize, instead of blaming or shaming someone else for a post or a problem that's come up, like, look inward. So
Right.
I hope that made sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, Teresa, I think this is such a helpful tool. And, a lot of people, they hear about, journaling and meditation, and those are good practices. But I think it's helpful to go like a little bit deeper to see
Yeah.
where's the personal responsibility in that, and where are we separating out, the facts versus the fiction, and to really to look at that as our own learning tool. Story is such a great tool for that. And, one of my mentors, Bo Eason, talks about doing your personal story. And one of the exercises that he has us do that I think is so powerful is not only to write the story from your own point of view, but to write a scenario, a situation, one of your stories or something that happens from somebody else's point of view that was there. So let's
Yes.
say it's from the point of view of like your dad or your mom or your best friend or your kids or somebody, or an innocent bystander. When you just, even if you don't know what they thought or what they were thinking, but if you could just kind of surmise what you think them looking
Yeah.
at that situation looks like, it can give you a completely different perspective of what you may be making it mean and where they're coming from in that story. And it actually
Yes.
gives a lot more richness of what it actually means to you when you look at kind of that next ripple of how it's
Yes.
affecting other people. And I think this is such an important topic now, where there's so much things that are happening in the world. There's a lot of uncertainty, there's unrest, there's things happening. And a lot of different people from a lot of different cultures are making certain things mean something that may be unintentional, or even if they are intentional, it's like, what are we making that mean? And then how are we showing up, and how are we adding to the story or taking away
Right.
from the story by our own actions? So I think it's a great
Right.
tool to be able to utilize in our own mental health, to really look at how what we're doing impacts other people. Where are they in the story? And then what are our boundaries to protect our own sanity in it as well?
Yes. I think this is really powerful for married couples, right? If you just look at,
Yeah.
like, married couples are just close, partnerships. It's just, I even use that language with my husband, because my husband's gone through similar training to me too, is more because he's wanted to have the same communication with me, which has been really powerful for us, because we're business owners together. We have children, and we also don't like to just work all the time. We like to do other things. So, like, even the other night, we got in a disagreement, and I probably can attest some of my feelings to the third trimester and fact that I was just like
We'll give you a pass on that.
over it. He was like, whoa, okay, we need to talk about this. And it was great because I was like, this is a story that I'm telling myself. And this is the story I'm telling myself about what is going on with you. So then we were able to clear the air, and then he did the same. And it was really good because the depths that I went about my own story, it was just like, this goes way back, the stuff that I was bringing up and thinking about. And, and he felt very, very defensive. But after telling that story to him and sharing him with where I was coming from with my reaction, and was very good, and same for him. And so it kind of like helped calm the energy down, and just so we could just be together. It's like I was just hurting for a little bit. Like I was just very uncomfortable. And sometimes in those moments, like I just have to be able to like look at each other from each other's points of view, the energy that we're putting out, the things that we're doing. Our roles have kind of shifted now. I am working, but I'm also taking care of a toddler, which is totally different. He's usually in preschool. So just managing the energy of hours, and he's working a lot because this is just a time period where, we need to ramp up our remote work. And but either way, that language you use about meaning and stories and owning the facts and being able to share your story and what you're making it mean with the person you love really does matter. And then it helps you get clear on, oh, that's very distorted. Like let's and being able to understand the other person's point of view is super helpful and very mature. Right. And in like a worldly level, and like helps you move through things faster as a relationship. But on a worldly level, if you look at what's going on, like the protests versus the riots, right after what happened last week, it's like the protests are proactive. They're trying to make a statement. The riots, there's a meaning there. That's very destructive behavior, and people are making it mean this incident mean a lot, whereas there could be a proactive approach to eliminating the 1% of dirtbag, civil service members out there. I mean, there's 1% dirtbags everywhere, but like, in this situation, it's like, how is rioting going to be proactive? Right. Protesting can be. So that's kind of a big global look. Right. Like I don't condone rioting because of this incident. It's horrible. However, the ability to like protest and advocate and push for better screening services, I don't know. I don't have the answer, but there are other ways besides violence. Right. Absolutely. Well, and I think too, it comes back to that personal responsibility. Is the actions that you're doing, are they things that are, you're going to feel good about in a couple of months from now or a year from now? And, everyone has eyes on, the example that you're having to your siblings or your children or your family, would they be proud of what you're doing and what you're moving forward on? So, these are all questions that you want to ask, yourself, and what is that moral compass for each person. And, it's a big topic, but, you want to look at what are the things that we're creating in our life. And that's why I really liked when you were talking about when things were happening, you had to set certain boundaries, right? And that I love the distinction of, it matters the 5 closest people that are in your life, but it's not like what everybody is thinking about, because you're not there to please all of them. You're doing the best you can with your impact that you're trying to do in the world, and creating those boundaries, creating environments that are supportive. That's why I talk about being a positive disruptor. A lot of people can be disruptors, but are you being a positive one? That is a big shift in who you're being in the world, and it's much harder to be a positive disruptor, and it can actually be more challenging because you are having to take consideration what your impact is. It's not just doing for doing. It's like, how are you actually affecting other people? Which reminds me, because we're creating environments, one of the things I always like to ask my guests is, we have different experiences in our own environments that we create, like how we feel in our bedroom versus our kitchen or our living room. What is your favorite room in your home, and why? Oh gosh, well, my favorite room right now is this area right here. I'm in my breakfast nook. And what I love about it is that behind me is the world. We have our little world map where it shows, well, you can't really see it, but the blue dots are where my husband's traveled. The pink dots are where I've traveled. And the green dots are where Magnus, Pear, and I have traveled. We actually spent a whole month in India a year ago, which was really awesome. And so I love this room because, one, it's got a bunch of like citrus fruit in it right now, which I'm like addicted to citrus fruit. Like I can't get enough. And it's got great views of San Diego, like outside over my computer, I can see our canyon, and then there's a nice view of downtown. And just like my little one eats right here next to me, and there's like a pub table here. So it's just nice. Like it's a nice, airy, lit space that doesn't have a bunch of cars or, clutter.
Yeah. Yeah. I love what people create, because it makes such a difference whether you have a large home or a small home. The small spaces that actually give us the most comfort or the most inspiration, or we feel the most loved and connecting, really makes a difference. And I think especially now, as we're really looking at what's important to us in our life and what that looks like.
Yes.
Which reminds me, you had mentioned earlier that you lost your mother at a young age. How is
Yes.
that for you now? Like, what was that impact for you? And especially now having, your, Magnus is young, and, you have another son coming on the way.
Yeah.
How does that all play out in your life?
Yeah. So, I mean, if I was more hormonal today, I would be crying, but it has been a journey. I mean, I don't think, time does heal, but it never changes the fact that, losing a parent, like I lost my father, who I was super close with 5 years ago too. And the missing the mom thing has definitely come back being a parent, and very prevalent my first child, because it was like, I wasn't super close with my husband's family yet, but it is definitely, a child can change that.
Right.
I mean, growing up with my brothers and dad, we were a very tight unit, and it was like, this is my family, this is who I got. And yeah, I love my husband's family, but they're just different. They're not my blood. They're not my blood. But that's the wrong viewpoint. That was a very closed off viewpoint. And they took Magnus under their wings, like his mom and dad and siblings, and it really opened me up. So now in this pregnancy, I've been leaning on them a lot. It doesn't make me miss my mom less. Like there are days when I'm like, even my dad, like my dad would absolutely adore Magnus, and they look actually very much alike at certain times. And I would really love to know what it was like for my mom raising children from a young age, because I have no idea what I'm doing most of the time. I'm just like, I mean, that's what girlfriend. I'm calling my girlfriends like, okay, what is this? Like, and luckily I have great girlfriends who are very motherly and have support, and I have support too. It's just the missing, like that. It's just part of my story. Like I have a mom who's in heaven, I believe, and she's working through others. I like to believe, and she's here. And I have to, when I tell the story it actually helps me voice it to Magnus, and even my little one in my belly, who I talk to every once in a while, is like, your grandmother is amazing, and this is what she taught me. And actually the initials, which is pretty cool, is the initials of, so Magnus starts with M, and then this new baby, I'm not telling everyone their name, but starts with an A, so you can guess. But Marianne was her name. And so now I'm going to put, a tattoo of MA on my finger, which represents my sons as well as my mom.
Yeah.
And, but like bringing her, so the one thing I learned from my dad, because I was with him the most, was that to keep someone alive, you talk about them. And if I sit there and just cry and be sad about it, that's totally fine. Totally a human thing. Like I've cried many a times about it. But when I start to talk about her and talk about what I've learned from her and her story and my upbringing with her, it's so unique. that it brings her to life. And even though it gives me that like kind of sucker punch of, my heart just gets tight still, that's just because she's my mother. But the fact that I can bring her to life anyway and talk about her, I mean, she still works through me. So what I'm saying is it's not peaches and rainbows, but but instead of pushing it away, like it doesn't matter, she's gone, like she does matter. And she is a big part of my life. And the way I take care of Magnus and am gentle with him and my new little one is partially her example of the way she was with me. And so I can honor that now, and when people, it's interesting when society can tell you things like, oh, I'm so sorry for your loss, or I feel bad for you don't have a mother, or just any number of things, right? Like whatever situation. And it's like, yeah, thanks, but I'm okay. I appreciate your condolences, but you know what? Like, I've got this. And when I kind of succumb to, oh yeah, I should feel sorry for myself, or I should be sad because other people feel bad. It's like, I don't have to. It's a choice. Right. Thank you for your comments. I know it's meant lovingly, but I'm actually okay. Like, she did a lot for me, and while it's sad sometimes, I don't have to be sad all the time about it. So I think that's a powerful thing to think about for people, not just in this light, but like if you think about when people tell you, gosh, it must be so hard with a toddler at home and running a business. And it's like, it is hard, but I got this, right? Like it is hard, but I've learned ways to cope, and it isn't actually all that bad. It isn't that hard all the time. But I think sometimes when society gives you these messages, you feel like, should I be feeling like this is really hard? Or should I be feeling worse than I am? And it's like, no, actually. And when you're doing big things in the world, stuff gets hard. Like, definitely. I mean, it's juggling family, work, especially when you're passionate and focused. Like, it's not easy, but that's like, you're in the arena. That's like living. Yeah. And when I used to think like, oh man, I got to slow down. Like maybe I'm doing too much. Like maybe this is not for me because it's hard. No.
Well, it's funny. I love how you've mentioned several times about like life in the arena. And when you think about that, especially as an athlete, that can be, bloody and battered, right? I mean, it's not a simple thing to be in the arena. And we know that when we push through things, especially, in times like this, in any times, right? Just think of each decade of your life, no matter how old you are, what was the challenging thing that you were faced during that time? And of course, there's other people maybe have had more challenging things, but that was your challenging thing. And when we move through those things anyway, that's where we build our resilience and our courage and our strength. And I love that this is part of your legacy, the energy of your mother and who you're being and how you're helping people move through things. This is when we move through challenging times, that's where we're really making that impact on other people. And I know we could talk about this all day, and I just want to know if you have like people are going to want to stay in contact with you. How can they go about that?
So check out movement-rx.com. It's our website, and it's got lots of wonderful support for people in this time. I mean, that's really where we're a company that can meet people where they're at. So if you're working from home and you find that your wellness program your company offers is crap, check out Movement RX. Or if you're a company leader and you want to take care of your people better at home, with physical nutrition, mindfulness stuff, check out Movement RX. And then, of course, you can look at, if you want to check out the podcast, My New Normal, you can look at drteresalarson.com, which is where I house all of my podcast stuff. Yeah.
Awesome. And we'll have that all in the show notes as well, so people can check that out. And I just want to thank you for your time, and especially as you're expecting anytime soon. Yeah. So just sending you all the love and grace there. And just thank you for sharing your wisdom and being here on the show.
Yes. Would you like to see a belly shot?
Yes. Yes, of course. Nice. You are the
Yes.
most fit mama I have seen. You look awesome. So for some of you will
Well,
be
thanks.
listening to the podcast, so you'll have to jump on to YouTube to actually see Teresa's belly.
Yes. Yes.
So that's
It's
so
quite
awesome.
large, I think.
Yeah, you look great. So thank
Thank
you
you,
again for being
Diane.
here on the show.
Thank you very much.
You got it. And for our listeners, thank you so much for your most valuable resources, your time. We so appreciate you being here with us. We're here having positive messages out in the world, how you can overcome challenges, empower yourself, stand in your power. Please share this message, subscribe, put any comments, something maybe you learned, something you'd like to, a question that you have for either myself or Theresa. Make sure you tag both of us, and we'd love to support you. So stay strong, be bold, and until we meet again, live your spa life. Bye for now. Bye-bye.